Happy Monday, everyone. It's Monday Fun Day, another round of trivia for this Monday. We have two guest hosts today, Peter Marks and Karen Wetzel, who will be leading us through this trivia challenge today. Last week's trivia stumped some of you, so we'll see how you do this week. If you wouldn't mind, when you're answering the trivia questions, put them in the comments, and then actually write out your entire answer rather than selecting A, B, C, or D. That'll help us and help you keep score as well. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on our two trivia hosts today, Karen and Peter. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy belated Mother's Day.
And I don't know, Karen, if you can see outside here in Napa, but it is pouring.
Gloomy.
It's actually just like coming down like buckets.
Yeah.
Well, today,
it's really gloomy.
Karen and I were going to talk about our trivia topic, which is viticulture.
Yay!
All about the culture of growing grapes. How exciting is that? What a great time to think about that now that it's spring, although it looks like winter out there today. And what we're going to do, again, as we go through this, Karen and I will each tackle a few questions, but what we'd like you to do is to keep tabs on the number of correct answers that you achieve. And then at the end, we'll give you a little summary on your performance and how you did. So we have 20 questions to go through today. And Karen, would you like to kick it off?
Sure, I'd love to get started. Okay, so first question. Grapes are ready to pick when A, the sugar and tannin are in proper balance for the styling of the wine desired. B, when the stems turn brown. C, when the grapes change color. Or D, when the grapes get soft. So when do you think the grapes are ready to pick? When sugar, acid, and tannin are balanced, stems are brown, grapes change colors, or grapes get soft. Grapes are ready to pick when? Okay, so from what I'm hearing is that A is the answer of choice, and you would all be correct. Those of you who guessed A, the sugar, acid, and tannin are in proper balance for the style of wine desired. And, you know, if you chose B, C, or D, those are all things that happen toward the end of the growing season. So those things might be happening at the same time. But you really have to have a perfect balance in the grape and the skins and all of that in order to have this really well balanced wine. So just the stems turning or the grapes changing colors or getting soft is not enough. You have to have the perfect balance of all these other things going on. The acid, sugars, and tannins need to be balanced. Okay. Okay, ready for number 2. So you may have heard of Phylloxera. What is Phylloxera? Is it an insect that feeds on green grapes, a fungus that infects the roots of a grapevine? Is it native to North America, or is it more prevalent in South America? And there's only one right answer here. So is Phylloxera an insect that feeds on green grapes? Is it a fungus that infects the roots? Is it native to North America or more prevalent in South America? Phylloxera. Probably heard it's not a good thing necessarily. Insect, fungus, native to North America or prevalent in South America. Okay, ready? Okie dokie. Okay, so drum roll, Phylloxera is native to North America. That's right. It started here in North America. It is an insect. However, it doesn't feed on the grapes. It feeds on the rootstock. So it's a louse, if you will. So it's not a fungus; it's an actual bug that feeds on the rootstock, and it is native to North America. And actually, oddly enough, we ended up sort of exporting it to Europe. But it is a North American rootstock that saved the day. Certain North American rootstock are Phylloxera resistant. So we not only gave it to the world, but we also found the cure. And it's not really that prevalent in South America because they have a lot of sandy soils down there, and Phylloxera does not really like the sandy soils too much. Okay, next question. Which of the following will not benefit a vineyard in a hot climate? So if you're a vineyard in a hot climate, which would not help you? Fog, dark-colored rocky soil, high altitude, or cool ocean breezes. Which things are not that great to have happen in a hot climate? Fog, dark-colored soil, high altitude, or cool ocean breezes.
They could use a little of the rain we're having here today, right, Karen?
Yes, they could definitely use a little bit of the rain, although we wouldn't want it in growing season. It's early here still, so it's fine too. Okay. All right. B. Okay. Well, and then predominantly people would be right. So D is the right answer. Dark-colored rocky soil would not really benefit a vineyard. And the reason for that in a hot climate, when you have a hot climate, and then you add dark-colored rocky soil, those soils tend to retain heat. So you already have the heat of the climate itself, and then you're adding more heat. You're really radiating heat from the ground up, and the grapes don't really get a chance to rest and revive themselves. So things like fog or cool ocean currents and breezes will help cool the grapes down, especially in the evening where they can rest and start building up flavors. And of course, it's cooler up in higher altitudes. And so you wouldn't really necessarily consider that a hot climate, but high altitudes, that cooling effect will help if it happens to be a high climate. I don't know, I guess I kind of said that backwards, but in any case, the answer is B. Dark-colored rocky soil do not help in a hot climate. Okay, it's like driving around in a black car. Those black cars get hotter than a white car. All righty. Which of the following has a modern maritime climate? Is it California, Chablis, Southeast Australia, or Bordeaux? Which has the moderate maritime climate? California, Chablis, Southeastern Asia, or Bordeaux? And we know there are so many different types of climates that we can grow grapes in. They all have their pluses and their minuses. Okay, so think about bodies of water, think about land mass. Okay, alrighty. So the area with the moderate maritime climate is in fact Bordeaux. So good job for everyone who voted for Bordeaux. California does have some areas that have moderate maritime climate, but in general, you wouldn't call it that. Chablis is more of a continental climate. Southeast Asia shares the Mediterranean climate for the most part. In many of its areas, shares the Mediterranean climate with Napa. But Bordeaux is really considered that moderate maritime climate where we have cool winters, very wet winters, and warm summers, but they do get some rain in the summer in Bordeaux. Okay, so then with a follow-up question, if you will, sort of on the same vein anyway, let's talk about a Mediterranean climate. So a Mediterranean climate, A, has high continentality, B, has a lot of summer rainfall, C is in cool temperature, it is cool temperature year round, or D, tends to produce full-bodied wines with ripe tannins. So Mediterranean climate, does it have high continentality? Does it have a lot of rainfall in the summer? Is it cool temperatures all year round, or does it produce full-bodied wines with ripe tannins? Think about all the Mediterranean climates that you've been to. Think about what you do in the Mediterranean, right? What does that picture look like from a weather standpoint in your mind? All righty. Mostly D's. Okay, so mostly D's, you guys are good. You're very smart. A Mediterranean climate does tend to produce full-bodied wines with ripe tannin. And the reason for that is because in a Mediterranean climate, which we're so normally, except for today, normally blessed to have here in Napa, it's very warm in the summer, dry, no humidity or very low humidity. And then most of the rain happens in the mild winter. And that's when we fill up our reservoirs. So it's that long, dry, warm growing season that really helps our fruit get very ripe here. And it also ripens our tannins, which of course are in the skins of the grapes. And so you need that extra ripening there as well. Okay, Peter, I'm passing it on to you.
All right. Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful. So maybe we'll turn it up a little notch here on the questions. So the question here is, you own a Chardonnay vineyard, but would like to plant Pinot Noir. What is the fastest way to get what you want? Is it A, bench grafting, B, layering, C, head grafting, or D, pollination, or pollinate? The fastest way. What would be the fastest way here? Speed is of the essence.
I know if I had a Chardonnay vineyard, I might want to trade it up for Pinot Noir. I love Pinot Noir. I like Chardonnay too, but Pinot Noir is my fave.
Okay. A lot of C's, and indeed, C for correct. That is correct. So head grafting, as you can see in the picture there, is where you take a cutting of another variety and graft it onto the existing trunk. And in the next year, you will get crop from that new cutting, that new graft. If you do bench grafting, that is done in a nursery, and you have to then plant the rootstock and the scion or the variety into the ground, and it takes at least 2 or 3 years before you get a crop. Layering is what you do is when you take an existing cane from the last year's growth and you bury it in underneath the soil, and then the buds from that cane will create roots. And after a few years, when that vine then is established, you cut it and sever it from its parent. And that's a way to propagate the same type of vine and same clone for many years. In fact, one of the most famous places to do that is in Boulanger, Champagne, has a plot called Vieille, and the vines go back to 1800s based on the layering technique. But again, once that cane is buried, it takes a couple of years before you actually get a crop. And then pollination works, but again, you're starting with a new variety and a new rootstock, and it's going to take at least a couple of years before that will come to fruition. All right, so you all started off really good on my question, so let's go to the next one, please, Christian. Which of the following grapes is most prone to uneven ripening? Is it Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc, or Zinfandel? These are all grapes we grow here in California, actually here in the Napa Valley as well. We have a lot of smarty pants out there. A lot of you are answering D. D for definitely. It's definitely Zinfandel. And you can see a picture here of Zinfandel with some grapes that look really ripe and red and ready to pick, and some that are still green. And Zinfandel has that unique capacity to have both ripe berries and green berries on the same bunch. And that's why you typically have to wait and ensure that all the grapes get ripe at the same time when you get close to harvesting. But as a result of that, what happens is sometimes those grapes that are further along turn into raisins. And that consequently will often result in a Zinfandel with high sugars and therefore really, really high alcohol. 15, 16% is not uncommon because you get those raisined berries in amongst a cluster of other grapes that aren't quite as ripe. So you're off to a great start, everyone. I'm very impressed. Let's go to the next one, Christian. Question is, which viticultural challenge is likely to be associated with cool spring temperatures? Is it A, gray rot, B, lack of ripeness due to shorting growing season, C, too many leaves creating shade, or D, frost damage due to new buds and shoots? So what is associated with cool temperatures in the spring?
Peter, I have this narrowed down to two. I think I know the answer, but I'm a little iffy on this one. See how our students do.
A lot of D's again. All right, well, let's see what the answer is. The answer here is gray rot. And you can see a wonderful picture there. That is gray rot, which is caused by botrytis. It's a mold, and when you get gray rot, the grapes just turn to mush. And typically with cool temperatures, often moisture as well will ensue the growing of this particular rot. Answer for B, lack of ripeness due to a shorter growing season. That can happen, but the spring is only a picture in time, and later on in the summer and fall, you can have wonderful weather that will make up for a cooler spring. Too many leaves creating shade. Well, actually, that would be an issue with more warm temperatures where you get a prolific amount of foliage and grapevines and grape leaves being produced. And then finally, frost damage only would take place if it's really cold temperatures. And we're talking cool temperatures here.
Hey,
All
Peter,
right, so let's go.
Before we go on, can I ask
Yes.
a question that I think maybe some of our audience might also be wondering?
Sure.
So with gray rot, how far into when the berries are starting to develop? I mean, to me, I always think of gray rot as something that happens on full-grown berries, but from this picture, it looks like it can happen on baby berries, right?
That's right. Yeah, a lot of times if you're in a climate where there's moisture, and that could be not just rain, but it could be fog, proximity to a lake or river. You might have to spray every couple of weeks to keep the risk of the gray rot at bay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See, I'm learning.
Yeah, aren't we all? All right, our next question is dead arm disease. It's also known as, is it A, eutypa, B, necrosis, C, photosynthesis, or D, fan leaf virus?
I think this one's hard.
It's a hard one. So it looks like the answers are a cross between A and B. So let's go and see what the correct one is. A is correct. So A is called eutypa, which is the synonym for dead arm disease. You can see in the picture there, that vine is fine on the left side, but on the right side, it has this eutypa, or also known as dead arm disease. And what happens is inside the trunk, basically the cells just die. And so there's no way to avoid that other than just cutting off that cane or that the shoot that you have that with, and make sure that you don't get it in the future. One of the things that is often done is in pruning in the wintertime, you try to prune around when the weather's dry and not too rainy, because eutypa will ensue when there's more moisture in the air. And so you try to keep the pruning period to when it's not too wet and rainy. I also used to say when I was taking the Master Wine exam, before they allowed typing, you came out of the exam because it was 5 days of handwriting that you'd had a dead arm. So but that's different from this.
You had your
Okay,
type.
good. So we have another pruning question here. So this is a picture of a grapevine, as you can see. And the question is, what type of pruning method is illustrated here? Is it A, cane, B, cordon, C, head, or D, spur? So what type of pruning method is this?
Is it a picture taken here in Napa, Peter?
C's and D's. Okay. Well, the answer is definitely D. And Karen, I don't know, you were saying something during the music that Art Fleming was playing the music too loud, so I couldn't quite hear what you said. Was that something you wanted to add?
The picture was from Napa.
Actually, it's Sonoma.
Okay.
Yep, it's Sonoma Valley. And so what the question is about pruning. Now, head is a type of trellising, or the way the vine is sculpted. So that is something. A cordon is also the way the vine is sculpted. But most vines are going to be either cane pruned, that is pruned to leaving a cane, or pruned to leaving a short spur. As you can see where those buds and where the leaves are just sprouting out. They're little spurs that usually have a couple buds on them. So that is called spur pruning. Pruning is the key to this question. Again, it's how the wine is trimmed or pruned during the wintertime. Good. All right. Do we have one more before we go back to Karen, I think? Or
Nope,
is this,
nope,
it's Karen's time. All right.
All righty. Don't take my questions.
No.
Okay. This one, you need to listen to the question very carefully. The temperature difference between summer and winter is called diurnal range, continentality, photosynthesis, or the fall equinox. So the difference between summer and winter, what is that called? Diurnal range, continentality, photosynthesis, or fall equinox. Okay, so I understand the answers have come in all over the place. So, all righty. So the temperature difference between summer and winter is called continentality. So in other words, if it's averages 45 degrees in the winter and 95 degrees in the summer, that is the continentality. A diurnal range is the temperature difference from day to night. So here in Napa, we have a wide diurnal range, especially in the mid to northern part of the valley, where it could easily be 50 in the summertime here at night and 95, even hotter during the day. And that's good. As we mentioned earlier, it allows the grapes to slow down and get their rest at night in the cooler temperatures, and then they get to ripen in the warmth of the sun. Continentality here in Napa would be about 45 in the winter, and as a high, well, maybe not a high, maybe a low, and then the summer probably could be 95 degrees, but that's ranging by season to season. Photosynthesis is where the plant converts CO2 and water to sugar by using the energy, the light energy that's absorbed by the green chlorophyll in the leaves. That sounds a little complex. It's not as complex as you make it as it sounds. And then the fall equinox, although entertaining, it's really where the sun is exactly above the equator, and really has some bearing on climate, but doesn't really fall into that continentality category. So very good. Thank you. Let's go on to the next one. Here we go. All righty. So which of the following would likely be controlled by a fungicide spray? Would it be viruses, nematodes, phylloxera, or botrytis cinerea? Which of the following would be controlled by a fungicide spray? Viruses, nematodes, phylloxera, or botrytis cinerea? These sounds more like a fungus. Okay, we seem to have a lot of B's and D's. The correct answer is, as Peter alluded to earlier, the botrytis cinerea. So botrytis cinerea is the fungus that gives us the beautiful noble rot under the perfect weather conditions. But if the weather conditions aren't quite right, then that botrytis cinerea gives us gray rot. You kind of saw it in the picture with the little berries that Peter showed earlier. This is a really good example on a strawberry, what it would look like. And the biggest difference between gray rot and noble rot sits on the top of the skin and just sucks the moisture out of the grape, leaving behind the concentration of flavors very gently, where gray rot just decimates the skin. And so obviously you can't use that. Nematodes was the second most guessed, and nematodes are actually a type of a worm, and they are in the ground and they eat the rootstock. Not exactly like phylloxera; they're a little bit different species, but does have devastating effects similar to phylloxera. And then, of course, phylloxera we talked about earlier is that louse that eats our rootstock, and unfortunately, there is no spray that's going to kill that thing. All right,
Karen, just to add.
Oh yes, please.
Fungicides will not kill viruses, nor will Clorox bleach, in case anybody's wondering.
That's not if you drink it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All righty. What is veraison? What is veraison? Is it planting different grape varieties in the same vineyard, controlling weeds with organic methods instead of herbicides, a type of soil that is very toxic to grapevines, or the onset of ripening and color change? Veraison. It's not a cell phone company, I promise you that. Different grapes in the same vineyard, spraying, controlling weeds with organic methods, type of soil that's toxic, or the ripening and color change of grapes. What do you guys think? Veraison. Veraison. Okay, so I understand we've got a lot of wine geniuses on board today, and the answer is, in fact, the onset of grape ripening and color change. And this is a great picture, a good example of that. If you're here in the summer and you're hanging around the vineyards, you may not have a clue what type of grape is growing, whether it's red or white, because everything stays green. We usually start to see early signs of veraison, like end of July, definitely full speed ahead into August. The grapes will start to change colors. At that time, if you remember from our very first question, that's when eventually the stems will get harder and the grapes will get softer. And of course, the color changes. This is really the accelerated ripening period. Acids start to drop and sugars start to rise. Planting different grape varieties in the same vineyard. Peter, I'm going to guess that's a field blend. That's what I would say that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Okay. Controlling weeds with organic methods could be organic farming, could be biodynamic farming. And I'm not sure what soil, Peter, do you know is toxic to grapevines?
There's certain, well, if you have too much manganese or other things, too much lime in the soil sometimes can also affect grapevines. But, grapevines are pretty sturdy things. They really are like weeds in the sense that they will grow in just about any type of condition. But certainly their growth would be stunted in other types of soil.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, next question. Which of the following vineyards can most likely be machine harvested? A vineyard with noble rot in Sauternes, a vineyard in the Moselle making Pradicat Rieslings, a vineyard of Gobelets trained vines in Beaujolais, or a VSP trained vineyard in New Zealand. Okay, so is it the vineyard in Sauternes with the noble rot, the Riesling vineyard in the Moselle, the Gobelet trained vines of Beaujolais, or VSP vines in New Zealand for machine harvesting? Okay. Okay. Well, boy, Peter, you must have given me all the easy questions because I understand that everybody got this one right. So yes, it is a VSP trained vineyard in New Zealand. And you can see a really good picture of this here. Actually, Peter and I were there together enjoying watching this machine harvester. So a VSP training, you can see these, the shoots are sort of woven up right through wires so that they're completely out of the way and the fruit zone is completely exposed. So very easy for a machine harvester to go right over the top of the grapevine and just tap those grapes off with these little soft beater bars. Just tap them off and they end up in a conveyor belt and spit them into the aisle next door with a truck waiting for them. You wouldn't want to machine harvest a noble rot vineyard in Sauternes. Noble rot happens in doesn't all happen at once, and botrytis can be a very desirable thing, but you really have to harvest in passes. You can't just go in and pick full clusters. It's why Sauternes are so expensive, why they're so concentrated. So we have to do that by hand. And then let's see, the Pradicat, the Moselle, the growing regions, the hillsides that they grow on are just too steep. And you really wouldn't want to put a $500,000 piece of equipment to roll down the hill. And then the Gobelet trained vines of Beaujolais. So Gobelet, think of goblet. It's sort of like a bush vine or an umbrella, and the branches are in the way. So you have to hand harvest that type of training. Okay,
hey,
my
Karen,
last question.
Somebody asked, what does VSP stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry, vertical shoot positioning. So you see in this picture, the canes and the leaves are pushed up through those wires, so they're vertical. That the shoots are vertical, and then the grape bunches are exposed. Makes it easy for machine harvesting.
And Karen, you didn't tell them that at the time we were in Marlborough, New Zealand, and you were actually taking a picture right from the angle where this picture is.
Yes,
and
I was.
The mechanical harvesting was coming right at you, and you started to run away, almost got run over. And I have a video of that. If anybody wants to pay me to see that, it's worth the money to see Karen being chased after by a mechanical harvester. You almost got gobbled up into that video.
Well, I was so enthralled with watching it happen that all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, it's here. Like, I got to get out of here. I got to move out of the way.
It's pretty cool.
Anything for a good shot, right? Okay, my last question of the day. Ideal soil has few nutrients and drains well, a good supply of water in the growing season, a high clay content to store water, or sand particles and high stone content to hold water. So ideal soil for grapevines. Few nutrients and drains well, a good supply of water in the growing season, high clay content to store water, or sand particles and high stone content to hold water. What do our vines like? What do they need to thrive to give us the highest quality concentration of flavors? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm telling you what, I keep getting fed by Christian that I must have got all the softballs here. I got all the softball answers. Or you guys are really doing your homework, which is so awesome. All righty. The answer, Christian, is few nutrients, and drains well. So I have a saying when I teach. I always say that we don't want our vines to be fat and happy. We want them to be lean and mean, because when a vine is overwatered or has too many nutrients, it's going to produce a lot of leaves and a lot of bunches. The problem there is that then it has to share its energy over a lot of different bunches and with the leaves and everything else. When you stress a vine out with lower nutrients and good draining soil, so it has less water, it starts to struggle, which means it's going to dial back the amount of fruit it produces, and therefore the fruit it does produce doesn't have to share as much of the energy, so it gets more energy per bunch. That gives us really intense flavors and concentration of flavors. A good supply of water in the growing season would conversely create, the vine would overproduce. It would also, vines don't particularly like what we call wet feet. They don't really like soggy feet, so that would not be good. High clay content to store water. We do have some soils that have clay, and that can be good to a very small degree, but a lot of clay is going to give vines those wet feet that they don't really like. And sand particles and high stone content do not hold water. In fact, those are good draining soils, great for Cabernet Sauvignon that really loves to have very dry feet. So I would say that is just not, the answer doesn't make sense. So there you go. Peter?
Thank you, Karen. That was great.
Well
done. Okay, so I see John Russo wants to know what I'm drinking out of my plastic cup, which is, by the way, my World Series Giants cup. It'll be a long time before that happens again. And it's just water to keep me hydrated. Okay, here we go. What type of training method is this in this picture? Is it the A, Lyre, B, Geneva double curtain, C, Smart Dyson, or D, Richard Smart? Let's see our viticulturalists out there, if they can answer this.
Maybe it's Richard Dyson. Get him confused. Now this one, if everybody gets it right, I'll know that you set me up too many softballs, Peter.
Okay, we have A, B, and C. All right, well, the correct answer is C for correct. This is called the Smart Dyson. And as you can see, it has part of the canopy growing upwards and the other part downwards. And this is typically used in areas where the vineyard is planted in very rich or fertile soil, and you want to disperse the canopy to allow sunlight and air circulation and not have too much shade, which would not allow the grapes to ripen and also would be more likely to get mildew issues if you have that heavy shading. A Lyre system, for those of you who don't know, it's essentially like a Y. So it's a shape like this, and it does the same type of effect to help spread the canopy out and get more sunlight and air circulation. Geneva double curtain is similar in that it is a double curtain, but it is hanging down on two sides, usually, just like you would hang your laundry outside to dry. And Richard Smart is actually one of the viticulturalists who invented this system, along with John Dyson. So the Smart Dyson is named after Richard Smart and John Dyson, who came up with this technique. Very good to all of you who got that one correct.
That was awesome.
Our next question, viticulture practice that incorporates cosmology and homeopathic preparations is called A, astroviticulture, B, biodynamic, C, organic, or D, stargazing sustainability. Which one of those incorporates cosmology and homeopathy? And the B's have it. So B is the best answer, biodynamic. So it is a way of growing grapes, or it could be any type of agriculture, what includes not only organic, but also timing your treatments based on the movements of the stars and the moons. And also they use homeopathic remedies. And in fact, a lot of their techniques involve creating these teas, which include things that are diluted many times over. And then the homeopathic remedies are meant to give more defense systems and help the vines build up a defense system to different types of pests and diseases that might be an issue. A and C, astroviticulture and stargazing sustainability. I was meditating the other day trying to come up with questions, and I came up and made those up. So those, I have no idea what those are. They're just made up names. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Okay, let's do the next question. Millerandage causes something called, is it A, coulure, B, hens and chicks, C, Pierce's disease, or D, powdery mildew? So which of those things does millerandage cause?
I love the word millerandage. It was my favorite word when I was learning about viticulture in my diploma class. I just like saying it.
Yeah. It rolls off the tongue.
It does. Millerandage.
Okay, and the answers, some A's. A's and D's. Okay, well, the correct answer is actually B. So this is what millerandage looks like. And as you can see, there are some grape berries that are normal size and some that are very small. And the name for this, typically in the nickname, they call it hens and chicks, or sometimes they call it peas and pumpkins. And this is caused during flowering, during the times when the flower of the grapevine opens up, and the grapevine is self-pollinating. It has both the male and female parts. But if you had bad weather like wind or rain or any other type of thing that can interfere with the pollination, you can get what they call millerandage, and it results in these different sized berries. Coulure is another type of problem that can come about at flowering, but in that case, some of the berries never get fertilized at all. And then Pierce's disease is a disease caused by a bacteria, typically transported by an insect like the sharpshooter. And then powdery mildew is a type of fungus that just about everybody in the world has to deal with. And cause, if you're not vigilant about it, then it can interfere with your grapevine ripening. Okay, so that's pretty good. Next question, which of these is not true about water needs? In other words, which of these is false in reference to water? A, water is needed for photosynthesis. B, vines require more water in cooler weather. C, water is accessed by the vine through transpiration. And D, mild water stress is beneficial to grape ripening. There they come. The answers are coming in fast and furious. A, B, D. Okay, well, a little bit all over, but a lot of the earlier questions were B, so that's correct. Vines require more water in cooler weather. Not true. In fact, the opposite is true. Vines require more water in hotter weather. All the other statements are true, so this is the only incorrect statement. Very good. I think we have one last question, Christian. This is a little bit of a tricky question. And the question is, which method best mitigates springtime frost? Number one is heaters. Number two is time machines. Number three, sprinklers. And number four is thoughtful winery design. So is the correct answer just A, heaters, B, heaters and sprinklers, C, all of the above, or D, none of the above?
We could use some heaters today. It's cold.
So the time machines didn't fool anybody? Huh. I'm surprised. If you had a time machine and you could go back 3 or 4 years, maybe, or even 10, 20 years before you planted the vineyard, maybe you'd be more thoughtful in a vineyard design. So C, or number 4 is not correct, and number 2 is not correct, but it is 1 and 3. In other words, answer is B. And as you can see here, here's one of the heaters that you often would see in a vineyard to give warmth and help increase the ambient temperature. Another means to deal with frost is to use overhead sprinklers, which will actually encase the bud in water, and then when that freezes, that water actually gives off latent heat, which protects the bud that it's surrounded by, and it keeps the temperature for at least another 2 or 3 degrees, keeps the vine safe. But if it gets really, really cold, like let's say 25 Fahrenheit or so, it's probably not much you can do. But indeed, the correct answer are heaters and sprinklers here.
Hey, Peter, would you consider a smudge pot? That's a heater, right?
That's a smudge pot, yeah.
That's
and now, of course, the other method they can use is the fans that everybody uses is also very effective, because that'll circulate the air, get that cold air that tends to settle in the lower altitudes, and bring it up, increasing that and bringing the warm air down. And then finally, if you are thoughtful winery design, you don't plant in areas that are more likely to have frost damage. And typically that would be up on a hillside where you have, again, higher altitude will be less likely to have to deal with a frost incident.
I always think of that sprinkler method, sort of like you're making a little igloo around each grape.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good metaphor. Thank you. All right, so questions are now done. So what we'd like you to do is total up, if you've been keeping score, all of the correct answers that you have answered today. And we'll give you a little recap, and then we'll have time for any other questions that people may have. So here's our recap. If you scored between 0 and 7 correct answers, there's a game called Viticulture. And you can buy this on Amazon, and maybe to have fun and learn a little bit more about viticulture. I haven't bought the game or tried it myself, but it looks really fun. If you scored between 8 and 14, you're doing really good. And you might be ready for our WSET Diploma course, or maybe level 3. But if you found this to be interesting and you want to learn more, and if you haven't tried a WSET course, maybe the time is right to do so now. And then finally, if you were top-notch, smarty pants, and you scored between 15 and 20, well, it's time for you to write a book on viticulture and maybe become a master of wine, as Stephen Skelton did here. And this is a great book, by the way, if you want to know more about viticulture from not a too scientific standpoint, but really good information. That book is an excellent choice.
I have that in my book collection, actually.
There we go. All right, Christian, are there any questions that we should answer before we bid adieu for today?
No, I think that was it. Thank you so much for an amazing round of trivia, and thanks for everyone for joining us. You were great hosts, and we'll have you back soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Karen's a great partner to work with. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Peter.
Hope to see you in person again soon.
Thank you. Bye, Christian.
Bye,
everybody.
Well,
thanks everybody for being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today on this fun day, Monday Fun Day trivia game. And we'll be back here again next Monday, 2 p.m. as well, with more trivia questions with a couple of new hosts as well. Don't forget to join us on Wednesday at 2 o'clock for some tasting and theory knowledge at the WSET level. We'll have, I believe, Catherine Bouguet back with us this week. Thanks again. Enjoy, stay safe, and drink well. Cheers.